The wind howled through the narrow valley, carrying the scent of rain and smoke from the distant fires that had ravaged the eastern fields. Ilara stood at the edge of the forest, her hands trembling as she clutched her sister's shawl against her chest. Beyond the hill, the king's men had arrived, riders clad in black armor, their banners bearing the silver wolf of Thorn. "They've come for her," whispered Leora, voice shaking. "Ilara, please, don't—" "Hush!" Ilara turned, brushing a tear from her sister's cheek. "You're all I have left. I won't let them take you." The village had lived under fear for months. Wolves attacked their flocks, crops failed, and whispers spread that the Alpha King demanded a tribute of blood for his protection. When the messenger declared that a maiden must serve in the royal keep for 1 year, no one spoke, until they said Leora's name. Now Ilara watched the soldiers dismount near the square. The captain's voice echoed like iron striking stone. "Bring forth the chosen girl. The king's order is not to be refused." Ilara stepped forward before anyone else could move. "It is I," she said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. "I will go in her place." The captain frowned. "Your name, girl?" "Ilara of Hollowmere, sister to Leora." He studied her face, then nodded curtly. "The king does not favor disobedience. You understand the terms?" She nodded. "My freedom for her safety. 1 year of service. Then mount. We ride at dawn." Leora tried to run after her, but Ilara pressed a hand to her shoulder. "Promise me you'll stay safe. Tend the fields. Keep the fire alive. That's all I need to know." Her sister's sobs followed her as the soldiers led her away. Each step felt heavier, each heartbeat a farewell. They rode through the night, past rolling hills and moonlit meadows. The world grew colder as they approached the mountains, ancient and wild, cloaked in mist. Ilara's heart pounded with dread and wonder. She'd never left her village before. By dawn, they reached the iron gates of Thorn Keep. Its towers pierced the clouds, the stone blackened with age. Ravens circled the battlements, and a low growl of thunder rolled across the sky. "Welcome to your new life," said the captain. Ilara was led through torchlit halls where nobles whispered behind silk sleeves. Every glance burned with suspicion. Servants hurried to avoid her eyes, as though afraid she carried a curse. In the great hall, a throne stood beneath a canopy of wolf pelts. There sat King Rowan Thorn, tall, broad-shouldered, his dark hair brushing the collar of his cloak. His eyes, cold as winter steel, lifted to meet hers. "So," he said, voice low, deep, almost inhuman, "you are the one who bartered her freedom away." Ilara swallowed hard. "I came willingly, Your Majesty." "Willingly?" He rose from his throne, each step measured, predatory. "No one comes willingly to my court. They come because they must." She met his gaze despite the fear twisting in her chest. "Then consider me the exception." A flicker of something, amusement perhaps, crossed his face before he turned away. "You will serve in my household, speak little, obey always. If you prove useful, your sister's safety remains intact." "If you do not—" His voice trailed off like the growl of a beast in the dark. Ilara's pulse thundered in her ears. "Understood, my lord." "Good," he murmured. "Then welcome to Thorn Keep, Ilara of Hollowmere." As she was led to her chambers, the castle seemed alive. The whisper of the wind through the halls, the flicker of shadows along the walls, the distant echo of a wolf's howl beneath the moon. Ilara closed her eyes and whispered to herself, "For Leora, always for her." And though she did not know it yet, that single promise would bind her fate to the Alpha Kings in ways neither could escape. Ilara woke to the toll of a distant bell. The morning air inside the stone chamber bit at her skin, sharp and cold as iron. A pale beam of light slipped through the narrow window, casting long shadows across the room. For a moment she didn't move, her mind still caught between the dream of home and the reality of Thorn Keep. A knock at the door startled her. A young servant entered, bowing quickly. "My lady, His Majesty summons you to court. You are to dress and follow me." Ilara hesitated at the title. "My lady?" It sounded foreign on her tongue, undeserved. "I'm no lady," she murmured, but the servant only smiled nervously and hurried her along. The corridors stretched endlessly, walls carved with ancient runes, tapestries depicting battles of wolves and men. The scent of pine and smoke lingered in the air, mingling with something else, something wild, unnameable. Everywhere she looked, eyes followed her. Nobles in rich velvet, guards with silver emblems, maids whispering behind hands. When they reached the great hall, Ilara froze. The vast chamber gleamed under chandeliers of burning wax, yet it felt cold. At the far end sat King Rowan, surrounded by advisors and nobles. His presence alone silenced the room. The servant bowed low. "Your Majesty, the girl from Hollowmere." Rowan's gaze lifted, steady and piercing. "Come closer." Ilara obeyed, though every step felt like walking toward a storm. He regarded her in silence for a long moment, then spoke. "You defied my order. I asked for your sister." "I did what I had to," she replied softly. His lips curved slightly, not in amusement, but in something darker. "Bravery or foolishness? I haven't decided which suits you." A ripple of laughter moved through the courtiers, but it died quickly when Rowan raised a hand. "You'll serve within my household. My word is law here. Disobedience will not be forgiven. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Majesty." He leaned forward. "Look at me when you speak." Their eyes met, hers trembling with fear, his calm and unblinking like the eyes of a predator studying prey. "You'll learn to hold your head high," he said quietly, "even when afraid. My people despise weakness." "I'm not weak," she answered before she could stop herself. Something flickered in his gaze. "We'll see." He turned to a tall woman dressed in silver, her face sharp and severe. "Lady Isolde, she will serve under your supervision. See that she learns our customs." Isolde's bow was shallow, her voice honeyed with disdain. "Of course, my king." As Ilara was led away, she could feel the weight of whispers following her. The peasant girl, the tribute. The foolish one who spoke back to the Alpha King. In the servants' quarters, Isolde's tone turned cold. "You'll speak only when spoken to. You'll bow before every noble, and if His Majesty looks your way, you'll keep your eyes to the floor. Understand?" Ilara bit her tongue. "Yes, my lady." Days passed in a blur of endless duties, polishing armor, tending fires, fetching wine for nobles who barely acknowledged her presence. Yet, even in the monotony, she sensed a strange awareness. Wherever she went, it felt as though unseen eyes followed her movements. One evening, as she carried a basin through the courtyard, she caught sight of Rowan standing alone on the balcony above. The wind stirred his cloak, and moonlight carved the sharp lines of his face. For a brief second, his gaze met hers. Her breath caught. There was no cruelty in his eyes this time, only something raw, something human. But before she could understand it, he turned away, vanishing into the shadows of the hall. That night, Ilara lay awake, the echo of his voice still haunting her thoughts. "You'll learn to hold your head high, even when afraid." She didn't know if it was a warning or a promise, but in the heart of Thorn Keep, surrounded by strangers and silence, it became the spark that refused to die. The nights in Thorn Keep were never truly silent. Ilara often woke to the sound of footsteps echoing through the corridors, faint howls carried by the wind, and the whisper of secrets that seemed to cling to the very stones. The torches flickered restlessly, their light stretching across the walls like claws. Days had turned into weeks, yet she felt no closer to understanding this place or its king. Servants avoided her gaze, nobles sneered when she passed, and Lady Isolde made sure she never forgot her place. Still, there was something else, an invisible presence that followed her wherever she went. That evening, while scrubbing the steps near the northern wing, two maids whispered nearby, unaware of how close Ilara was. "They say he changes when the moon rises," one said, voice low and trembling, that his eyes turned silver, and his teeth. "Shh! You'll be heard," the other hissed. "It's forbidden to speak of the curse." Ilara froze, the brush slipping from her fingers. "Curse?" The word hung in the air, thick and heavy. When she turned to them, both maids paled. "I heard nothing," Ilara said quickly, though her pulse raced. Later that night, as she carried linens through the east corridor, she found herself drawn toward a door left slightly ajar. Inside, candlelight glowed over a table covered in books and parchment. Maps, old sigils, and sketches of wolves marked the surface. Curiosity overcame her fear. She stepped closer. "You shouldn't be here." The voice came from the shadows. Rowan stood by the window, half hidden by darkness, his eyes glinting like steel under the moonlight. Ilara's breath caught. "Forgive me, Your Majesty." "I didn't mean—" "You're far from your quarters," he interrupted, his tone calm but sharp. "Do you make a habit of wandering through forbidden halls?" "I heard voices," she said honestly, "and I wanted to understand why people fear you." For a heartbeat, silence stretched between them. Then Rowan stepped into the light. His expression was unreadable, but something in his gaze softened. "Fear is easier to command than loyalty," he said quietly. "But is it what you want?" she asked before she could stop herself. He tilted his head slightly. "You're bold for a servant. Maybe just foolish." A faint, almost reluctant smile touched his lips. Perhaps both. He turned toward the table, fingers brushing over the parchment. "What you heard today about curses, transformations, it's better you forget it. The truth is not kind." "Then it must be real," she whispered. Rowan's jaw tightened. "Go back to your chambers, Ilara, and do not repeat what you've heard." She hesitated. "If I promised to stay silent, would you tell me why the people whisper about wolves?" His gaze flicked to the window where the moon hung full and bright. "Because they see monsters where there are none," he murmured. "And sometimes they are right." The air between them thickened, heavy with something neither could name. Ilara felt her heartbeat quicken, not from fear but from a strange, unexplainable pull. She bowed her head. "Good night, Your Majesty." As she turned to leave, Rowan's voice followed her, low and almost human. "Be careful whom you trust in this place. Shadows have ears." That night she couldn't sleep. The memory of his eyes, haunted and fierce, burned in her thoughts. The whispers she'd heard began to stitch themselves into patterns of truth. In her dreams, she saw the king standing beneath a blood-red moon, his body twisting between man and beast, his roar echoing through the castle. She woke, drenched in cold sweat, the sound of wolves crying in the distance. And though dawn brought the illusion of calm, Ilara knew something inside the keep was changing. Something ancient, restless, and watching her. The great hall shimmered with candlelight and gold. Music rose from the minstrel's corner, soft at first, then swelling into a rhythm that set silk gowns in motion. It was the night of the harvest feast, an evening of alliance and display, where nobles measured power through smiles and glances sharper than blades. Ilara stood at the edge of the room, clutching a tray of goblets so tightly her knuckles turned white. Lady Isolde's voice rang in her head. "Do not speak. Do not meet their eyes. Do not forget your place." Yet her gaze betrayed her. Drawn again and again to the dais where King Rowan sat beneath a canopy of dark banners, a crown of iron circling his brow. He looked nothing like the man she'd seen in shadowed corridors. His posture was regal, his expression unreadable. Courtiers surrounded him, laughing, offering flattery like offerings to a god. But every so often, when he thought no one watched, his gaze drifted to her. It was never long, just enough to make her heart falter. "Watch yourself, peasant," hissed Lord Hadric as he swept past her, his velvet cloak brushing her arm. "This hall isn't meant for your kind." Ilara kept her eyes lowered. "Yes, my lord." He paused, smirking. "Or perhaps you think the king has taken an interest in you." "Is that why you keep staring?" Her stomach knotted. "I meant no disrespect." Hadric leaned close, his breath thick with wine. "Be careful. The last servant who caught his eye vanished before sunrise." Before she could respond, a low growl silenced the room. Every head turned toward the throne. Rowan had risen, eyes fixed on Hadric, his expression carved from stone. "Is there a reason you harass my staff, Lord Hadric?" Hadric blanched. Your Majesty, I was merely jesting." "Then find your humor elsewhere." The king's voice was quiet, but the danger in it rippled through the hall. The silence lingered until Rowan sat again, the music cautiously returning. Hadric stumbled away, muttering curses under his breath. Ilara's pulse raced. She should have felt relief, but the weight of the king's defense felt heavier than fear. Why would he care? Moments later, Lady Isolde appeared at her side, her smile thin and sharp. "You're fortunate His Majesty has a temper tonight. Next time, don't test it. He doesn't always show mercy." Ilara nodded and escaped to the outer courtyard, the cold night air burning her lungs. Stars glittered above the towers, and laughter drifted faintly from the hall. She pressed a hand to her chest, trying to steady her breath. "Running from the feast already?" Rowan's voice cut through the quiet. He stood near the archway, his cloak brushing the ground, moonlight catching the silver threads in his tunic. "I thought you'd be celebrating, my lord," she said, forcing her voice steady. "I've had enough celebration for one lifetime." He stepped closer. "Hadric shouldn't have spoken to you that way. You didn't have to defend me. Didn't I?" His tone was calm, yet something dangerous lingered beneath. "You serve in my court. Your safety is my responsibility." She met his gaze, searching his face. "And what am I to you, truly? A servant? A debt paid?" "A mistake." He studied her for a moment, the flicker of torchlight reflecting in his eyes. "You ask questions no one dares to ask. Maybe I don't know the rules yet." He almost smiled. "Or maybe you were never meant to live by them." A sudden gust of wind swept through the courtyard, scattering leaves at their feet. The tension between them tightened, a thread pulled taut between two worlds that should never have met. Rowan turned first, his voice softer now. "Go back inside, Ilara, before the court notices what even I shouldn't." She wanted to speak, to ask what he meant, but he was already walking away, disappearing into the torchlit corridors of Thorn Keep. As the distant music swelled again, Ilara whispered to herself, "He says I shouldn't. But it's already too late." The night was colder than any before. A storm was gathering above Thorn Keep, the wind scraping against the walls like claws searching for a way in. Ilara hurried through the corridors, clutching a lantern that flickered with every gust. The feast had ended hours ago, yet she could not sleep. Something about the king's eyes, how they had glimmered like silver, haunted her. She found herself near the West Tower, where few dared to go. The air there felt charged, heavy with something alive. From behind the great doors she heard a sound, low, guttural, pained. Her pulse quickened. "Your Majesty," she whispered. No answer came, only another sound, a growl deep and trembling. Against her better judgment, Ilara pushed the door open. Rowan knelt in the middle of the chamber, his cloak discarded, sweat beading his skin. The moonlight poured through the window, and his breath came in ragged bursts. For a moment she thought he was ill, until she saw the light in his eyes, burning bright and unnatural. He turned sharply, his voice hoarse. "Get out!" Ilara froze. "You're hurt." "I said go!" His body shuddered, his hand gripping the edge of the table so tightly the wood splintered. Fear surged through her, but so did something else, an ache of concern that made her step closer. "Tell me what's happening." Rowan's teeth clenched, his words breaking through a growl. "You shouldn't see this." But it was too late. His back arched as if something inside him was tearing its way free. Ilara gasped, dropping the lantern. For a brief, terrifying moment, she saw the outline of a wolf, shadow, and flame emerging from within him. Then, as quickly as it came, it vanished. Rowan collapsed to his knees, breathing hard, the air around him charged with wild energy. Ilara rushed to his side. "Please, let me help." He caught her wrist before she could touch him. His grip was iron, his eyes flashing with that same silver light. "You can't. No one can." "You're cursed," she whispered. Rowan's silence was answer enough. He released her slowly, exhaustion dulling his edge. "It's the mark of my bloodline. The moon calls to us, it binds and breaks us. Then why hide it?" He laughed softly, a sound without joy. "Would you follow a king who becomes a beast when the moon rises?" Ilara swallowed, her voice barely a whisper. "Maybe I would, if the beast still had a heart." Rowan looked at her, then truly looked. "You don't understand the danger you're in." I think I do. His gaze softened for a fleeting moment before he turned away. Go, Ilara. Forget what you saw. But as she backed toward the door, her voice trembled. I can't forget what's true. The thunder rolled above them, shaking the windows. Rowan stood, the moonlight painting his face in silver and shadow. Then remember this, he said quietly. Every life bound to me ends in ruin. Ilara hesitated, the truth of his words sinking deep. Yet even as she fled down the corridor, she knew the image of him, half man, half myth, would never leave her. Later, alone in her chamber, she pressed her hand to her chest, where her heartbeat thundered like a drum. She had seen what others feared to whisper about. She had looked into the eyes of the Alpha King and found not a monster, but a man breaking beneath the weight of his own nature. And though she tried to tell herself it was only pity that stirred inside her, she knew it was something far more dangerous. Morning came grey and heavy, the sun hidden behind a sky of iron. The echoes of the night before clung to Ilara like a second skin. Every sound, the scrape of boots in the corridor, the clang of armor, the whisper of servants, felt louder, sharper. She couldn't stop seeing Rowan's eyes, silver and tortured beneath the moon. She tried to bury herself in her work. Lady Isolde assigned her to the upper halls, polishing relics and arranging the endless scrolls of the royal archive. It should have been mindless, safe. But the whispers had already begun to shift. Wherever she went, heads turned, conversations halted. The servants spoke softer when she passed, and the guard's stares lingered too long. By midday, Isolde's voice cut through the silence. You seem distracted, Ilara. I can't imagine why. Ilara bowed her head. Forgive me, my lady. I haven't been sleeping well. Isolde murmured, circling her like a hawk. Perhaps the king's generosity unsettles you. Not every peasant earns his notice. Ilara stiffened. I only serve, as I was ordered. Serve wisely, then. Isolde leaned close, her breath icy. The last girl who forgot her place vanished from this keep without a trace. When Isolde swept away, Ilara gripped the edge of the table, forcing herself to breathe. She couldn't afford fear, not now, not when she'd seen the truth hidden beneath the crown. That evening she was summoned to the council chamber. The great doors opened to a long table surrounded by nobles draped in silks and ambition. Rowan sat at its head, eyes shadowed with exhaustion. Ilara of Hollowmere, announced the steward, present by order of His Majesty. She bowed deeply. Your Majesty. Rowan's gaze met hers for a fleeting second, sharp, unreadable, and then turned to the lords assembled. You all know why we meet. The alliance with the House of Varin must be secured before winter. Their armies will strengthen our borders. A murmur of approval ran through the court. Lord Hadric, ever eager to be heard, smirked. And their daughter, Lady Selene, is eager to fulfill her royal duty. Ilara's breath caught. She hadn't known. A marriage. Of course there would be one. A king couldn't stand alone. Rowan's jaw tightened. It is a union of necessity, not desire. Hadric chuckled. Still, it will please the people to see their king bound in holy vows rather than lesser attachments. The words struck like a blade. Ilara stared at the floor, pretending not to understand. But she felt the heat of Rowan's anger ripple through the chamber. That will be enough, he said coldly. This discussion is closed. When the meeting ended, she tried to leave unnoticed, but Rowan's voice stopped her. Stay. The nobles filed out, their whispers trailing like smoke. When they were alone, Rowan leaned against the table, his tone softer. You heard. She nodded. It's your duty. Duty, he repeated, as if the word itself burned. You think that makes it easier? It's what's expected of a king, she said, trying to keep her voice even. Your people need alliances. They need you. And what do you think I need, Ilara? Her heart stumbled. It's not my place to say. Rowan stepped closer, the air between them trembling. Maybe it should be. For a moment, neither spoke. The weight of crown and blood and longing pressed between them like a curse. Then Rowan turned away, his expression shuttered once more. Go, he said quietly. before I forget what I'm bound to." Ilara bowed and left, her chest tight with something she couldn't name. Outside, the first snow began to fall, soft and relentless, like chains forged from silence. The days grew shorter, and the keep sank deeper into winter's chill. Snow pressed against the high windows, muffling the world outside. Inside, whispers moved through the halls like ghosts, rumors of the king's upcoming betrothal, of dark omens in the north, of servants who vanished without reason. Ilara kept her head down, but every word she overheard clawed at her thoughts. She had begun to see patterns where others saw stone. The castle breathed, shifting between silence and secrets. Some nights, she swore she heard footsteps echoing where none should walk. Once, she found her chamber door open, though she was certain she'd locked it. One evening after the council dismissed her from errands, she lingered in the library, drawn by a strange draught rising from the floor. The torches flickered. The air smelled faintly of dust and old earth. As she knelt to collect scattered scrolls, her hand brushed against a stone that felt loose. She pressed it, and a small section of the wall slid inward with a faint click. Her pulse quickened. Behind the wall, a narrow stair spiraled down into darkness. "Ilara," she whispered to herself. "This is madness." Yet she couldn't stop. With a candle trembling in her grip, she descended. The air grew colder, the sound of dripping water echoing faintly below. Symbols carved into the walls caught her eye, wolves, moons, crowns, all intertwined. She followed them until the staircase opened into a vast chamber lit by dying torches. At its center stood a stone altar, cracked and ancient, surrounded by forgotten relics. Books lay scattered, their bindings ruined by time. She lifted one carefully, brushing away the dust. The words were written in an archaic tongue, but she recognized one phrase repeated over and over. "The blood of the Alpha binds the moon." Her breath caught. The curse. It wasn't just legend. It was written history. A voice echoed behind her. "You shouldn't be here." Ilara spun around, the candlelight flaring. Lord Hadric stood in the archway, his expression twisting into a smirk. I didn't mean—" He stepped closer, his tone dripping with false amusement. "Curious little servant. I wondered how long it would take before you went poking where you shouldn't." Ilara took a step back, clutching the book. "Does the king know what lies beneath his castle?" Hadric's smile widened. "Oh, he knows, he just pretends the past is buried. But the bloodline of Thorn is built on curses and betrayal. The moon owns him, and soon it will own this entire kingdom." "Why tell me this?" she demanded. "Because you've already sealed your fate." His voice dropped to a whisper. "For you've seen too much." Panic surged through her. She turned to flee, but Hadric caught her arm, his grip bruising. "If you value your life, keep silent. The king cannot protect what he does not control." Before she could reply, footsteps echoed from above. The torches wavered. Hadric released her abruptly, his smile vanishing. "Go," he hissed. "And pray he never finds out you were here." Ilara ran, her heart hammering as she climbed the stairs. When she reached the library, she collapsed against the wall, gasping for breath. The book still trembled in her hands, its words burning into her mind. "The blood of the Alpha binds the moon." That night she hid the book beneath the floorboards of her chamber, but sleep refused to come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Rowan's face beneath the moon, the beast flickering behind his eyes. And now she knew. It wasn't just his curse, it was the kingdom's. Somewhere beneath the stone, the truth had been waiting. And now it had found her. The following morning broke under a sky of steel and mist. Ilara's reflection in the frost-covered window barely looked like her own, her eyes hollow, her hands trembling from the weight of what she'd discovered. The words carved into the pages she'd hidden beneath her floorboards echoed relentlessly in her mind. "The blood of the Alpha binds the moon." But before she could think of what it meant, a sharp knock shattered her thoughts. Lady Isolde entered without waiting for permission, her expression colder than the air. "By royal decree," she said, voice dripping with triumph, "you are to report to the Great Hall at once. His Majesty has requested your presence." Ilara's heart stuttered. He knew. Somehow, he knew. The hall was already crowded when she arrived. Nobles lined the sides, their whispers rising like a tide. Rowan sat on his throne, unreadable, a single parchment clenched in his hand. Lord Hadric stood beside him, his smirk faint but poisonous. "Ilara of Hollowmere," Rowan said, his tone steady but hard. "You have been accused of trespassing into restricted parts of the keep. Do you deny it?" Ilara's mouth went dry. She could feel Hadric's eyes on her like knives. Your Majesty, I didn't mean to intrude. I only—" "Answer the question." Her voice broke. "No, I don't deny it." A murmur rippled through the court. Rowan's gaze flicked toward Hadric, then back to her. "Do you know what lies beneath this castle?" "I know only that it concerns your bloodline," she said softly. "And that you've been carrying this curse alone." The silence that followed was suffocating. Rowan rose from the throne, descending the steps slowly, his cloak trailing behind him. "And what gives you the right to speak of my curse?" "I wasn't trying to expose you," she said, her voice trembling. "I wanted to understand, to help." "To help?" His laugh was sharp and hollow. "You speak of help when you disobeyed my orders, when you uncovered what generations have buried in blood?" Ilara's chest tightened. "I saw what this curse does to you. It's not just a burden, it's pain, and you don't have to bear it alone." His jaw clenched, his anger shifting into something rawer. "Do not presume to know my pain." Hadric stepped forward smoothly. "Your Majesty, she has admitted to her crime, the punishment for intrusion and defiance." "Enough!" Rowan snapped, his voice like thunder. "Leave us." Hadric hesitated but bowed and withdrew, his smile curdling as he passed Ilara. The nobles followed, murmuring until the hall was empty but for them. For a long time Rowan said nothing. Then quietly he asked, "Why didn't you stay silent?" "Because silence would have meant pretending not to care," she whispered. "And I do care." He turned away, his hands flexing at his sides. "You don't understand what that means. Caring for me is a death sentence." "Then let it be," she said, the words escaping before she could stop them. "Because watching you destroy yourself is worse." He faced her again, fury and grief colliding in his eyes. "You think this is about me? The curse consumes everything it touches. Those I love suffer first." Her breath caught at the word love. "Then why let it?" "Because it's all that's left of what I am," he said quietly. "Without it, I'm nothing but the beast." The tension between them hung heavy, trembling like a bowstring ready to snap. For a moment, neither moved. Then Rowan stepped back, his voice breaking into a whisper. "You should have stayed away." Ilara's throat ached. "And if I can't?" His eyes closed, his control fraying. "Then I'll do what I must to protect you from me, if nothing else." Guards entered at his signal, their faces grim. "Escort her to her quarters. She's not to leave until further command." As they led her away, she looked back once. Rowan stood alone at the foot of his throne, his shoulders bent beneath the weight of duty and desire, a king breaking apart between the man he was and the monster he feared to be. Storm clouds gathered over Thorn Keep, casting the towers in ominous shadow. The air was sharp with tension, brittle with the promise of violence. Ilara sat at the edge of her narrow bed, her hands clenched in her lap, listening to the muffled thunder rolling across the mountains. She hadn't been allowed to leave her chambers in 2 days. Food arrived silently. No words were spoken. No answers came. She stared at the door, willing it to open, but the silence stretched on like a punishment. It was worse than anger, this stillness, this severing. That night she woke to screams. They rang through the stone corridors like the cry of a wounded animal, sharp, frantic, and filled with terror. Ilara rushed to the door and pounded against it. "What's happening?" No one came. Then she heard it. A howl. Low at first, then rising into a piercing note of fury and pain. It shattered the night, echoing off the walls like thunder trapped in a cage. It wasn't human, and yet it was him. Ilara backed away from the door, heart pounding. Something terrible was happening. She pressed her ear to the cold wood, straining for any clue. Shouts. Steel drawn. More screams. Then the voice she knew better than her own heartbeat. Deep, guttural. Not quite his, but unmistakable. "Leave them!" It was Rowan. But something inside him was breaking. She turned and ran to the window, pushing it open against the icy wind. From her narrow vantage, she could see the courtyard below in chaos. Guards running, torches dropped in the snow, blood staining the stone. A figure, barefoot, shirt torn, eyes glowing silver, moved like a shadow through the frenzy. Rowan. Ilara gasped as she saw him toss one of the enemy attackers against a wall with monstrous strength. His form twisted with every movement, half man, half beast, shifting between the two as if his body couldn't decide what it was. He roared again, and the sound split the sky. Suddenly the door to her room burst open. A young guard, breathless and pale, appeared. "You need to come with me, now." "What's happening?" "We're under attack. Rebels loyal to the northern clans. They've breached the outer wall. The king has changed." "Then I have to help him." The guard hesitated. "He said no one was to enter the courtyard." "I'm not no one." She followed him down the back halls through winding stone passages slick with melting snow. They emerged into a gallery overlooking the courtyard, just as Rowan fell to his knees, growling in pain. His hands clawed at the stones, his muscles straining against the beast within. Ilara didn't wait. She ran down the steps and into the storm. "Rowan!" He looked up at her voice. For one breathless second, his glowing eyes locked onto hers, wild and lost. "Ilara," he whispered, but the word came out broken, torn between man and wolf. She dropped beside him, ignoring the blood on the ground, the cold, the danger. "Fight it. You're stronger than this. You're still you." He gritted his teeth, his hands shaking. I can't hold it." "Yes, you can." She touched his face gently. "Because I'm here, and you're not alone anymore." His chest heaved. Slowly, the silver in his eyes dimmed. His hands, once clawed, returned to skin. The snarl on his lips faded into a breath. Around them, the courtyard stilled. The rebels had been driven off. The guards stared in stunned silence. Rowan looked at her, trembling. "You saw what I am. I saw who you are," she said. And in that moment, under the shattered sky, she held him, not as a servant to a king, but as the one soul who refused to run when he became the monster they feared. The courtyard reeked of blood and smoke. Snow melted around crimson stains, and the torches cast flickering shadows on the fallen. Rowan stood still, his chest rising and falling in uneven rhythm, the last remnants of the beast trembling beneath his skin. Ilara stayed close, her presence a tether. Guards surrounded them, wary, watching their king with a mix of fear and reverence. None dared speak. Rowan turned to her, voice hoarse. "You should never have come." "I wasn't going to leave you," she said. His eyes softened, but only for a heartbeat. Then the steel returned. "It's not safe for you here, not anymore." Before she could answer, a commotion erupted at the gates. A cloaked figure broke through the line of soldiers, shouting her name. "Ilara!" she gasped. "Leora!" The moment their eyes met, she ran. Her sister collided into her arms, trembling. "They said you were gone," Leora sobbed. "I had to come. They sent riders. Someone betrayed the village. They're taking people. I had no choice." Ilara held her tightly. "Who sent you?" "A man. He said he worked for the king, but I don't think he does. He said I'd be safe here, but then he locked me in a wagon. I escaped when the fighting started." Rowan's voice darkened. "Hadric." Ilara turned. "He used her. To draw me out." "To break you." Rowan nodded grimly. "He's been moving in shadows for too long, and now he's using blood to test my control." "We have to go," Ilara said. "She's not safe here." "Neither am I." Rowan hesitated, torn between fury and fear. "If you leave now, I can't protect you. I don't know if I can find you again." Ilara reached for his hand. "Then don't find me." "Come with us." Shock flickered in his eyes. "You don't know what you're asking." "I do. I've seen it. I've touched the curse, and I'm still here." The moment held. Then, quietly, Rowan said, "Take the secret tunnels beneath the East Tower. They'll lead you out of the keep into the old forest. My sigil will buy you time, but not forever. You're not coming. I can't. Not yet. If I run now, Hadric wins. The people lose faith. The throne falls into the wrong hands. Alara swallowed her grief. Then what do we do? He reached into his coat, removing a chain bearing the royal crest. This will keep you safe. Find the old guardians in the woods. Tell them the Alpha still lives. Leora clung to Alara, confusion in her eyes. Who is he? Alara met Rowan's gaze, the answer caught between sorrow and love. Someone who saved us. Someone we have to save now. Rowan stepped forward, his hand brushing Alara's cheek. I will find you when it's safe. When the moon no longer owns me. She pressed her forehead to his. Promise me. I swear it. Guards approached. Time was running out. Rowan turned sharply. Take them through the tunnels, now! Alara grabbed Leora's hand as they were ushered away, casting one final glance over her shoulder. Rowan stood alone in the snow, surrounded by ash and ruin, but still unbroken. As the stone passage swallowed them in shadow, Alara whispered to her sister, We're not running, we're surviving. Until it's time to fight. And behind them, in the heart of Thorn Keep, the howl of the king rose once more, less a cry of pain now, and more a vow. The forest wrapped around them like a cloak, thick with mist and silence. Snow clung to branches and buried the paths beneath their feet. Alara gripped Leora's hand tightly as they moved through the trees, following the faint markings Rowan had etched into the stones centuries before. Wolves, moons, the sigil of thorn. Leora was quiet, eyes wide. Are we really safe here? For now, Alara said, but not for long. We need to find the guardians. They had traveled for nearly 2 days, sleeping beneath the roots of ancient oaks, keeping fires low and hidden. Each howl in the distance sent Leora trembling closer, but Alara held firm. The sigil on the chain around her neck pulsed faintly, as if guiding them towards something unseen. On the third night, beneath a sky of pale stars, they found the ruins. Once a temple, now a circle of shattered stone and ivy-covered pillars, the place hummed with forgotten power. In the center, a brazier stood cold and empty. Alara stepped toward it, drawing the chain from beneath her cloak. As the metal touched the stone, wind howled through the clearing. The brazier ignited on its own, casting golden light into the shadows. A voice rang out behind them. Who carries the blood of Thorn? They turned. A tall woman stepped from the trees, her silver hair braided with feathers, eyes as sharp as a falcon's. Behind her stood 3 others, 2 men and another woman, all cloaked in furs and armed with blades carved from obsidian. I don't carry his blood, Alara said, raising the sigil, but I carry his will. The leader stepped forward, studying her. How you speak boldly. Few dare invoke the Alpha's name. I came to warn you, the king's court is no longer his. Hadric is moving against him. He used us as pawns, and now he's taken the castle piece by piece. Rowan stayed to stop him, but he's alone. The Guardian's gaze darkened. Hadric seeks to break the bond. If he gains the ancient seal beneath the keep, he'll control the curse, Alara finished. He'll bend it to his will. The woman nodded once. Then we have no time. Leora stepped beside her sister. We'll help, whatever it takes. That night, the Guardians prepared for war. Spears were sharpened, runes carved into armor, chants whispered into blades. Alara watched them, a fire growing inside her. She had been a servant, a sacrifice, but now she was something else. Near dawn, one of the scouts returned breathless. The castle burns. Hadric has turned the eastern wing to ash. The people flee. Rowan is still inside. Alara's blood turned cold. The leader turned to her. Are you ready to return? Yes, she said. But this time not as a prisoner. They rode through the forest like shadows, wolves trailing silently behind. The scent of smoke reached them first. Then came the light, Thorn Keep on the horizon, its towers aflame. By the time they reached the gates, chaos ruled. Soldiers clashed steel in the courtyards, loyalists and rebels tearing the castle apart. Alara dismounted and sprinted through the familiar halls. The path burned into her memory. She found Rowan in the heart of the keep, surrounded by fire and blood. He was wounded, shoulder slick with red, but still standing, still fighting. "Ilara?" he choked. "I told you I'd come back." She threw him a blade, and together they turned to face the enemy. Hadric stepped from the shadows, flanked by traitors. His smile twisted. "Touching reunion, but it ends here." Rowan growled low. "You've stolen enough. Tonight I take it back." Ilara stood at his side, eyes blazing. "This castle doesn't belong to fear. It belongs to its king." And as moonlight poured through the shattered ceiling, the battle began, not just for the throne, but for the soul of a kingdom. The halls of Thorn Keep burned around them, but Ilara's world narrowed to the rhythm of her breath, the weight of the sword in her hand and Rowan at her side. Together they fought as if bound by blood, silent, seamless, unstoppable. Hadric's men fell one by one, but still he stood, his blade dark with betrayal, eyes gleaming with madness. "You think this changes anything?" he spat, circling them. "You think love can cure what festers in his blood?" Rowan's voice was a growl. "You know nothing of love, only control." "And you," Hadric sneered. "You think chaining yourself to a girl will make the wolf obey?" "She's not a chain," Rowan said, stepping between Hadric and Ilara. "She's the only thing that ever freed me." Then he lunged. Their swords clashed with a thunderous ring. Ilara moved instinctively, watching for weakness. Rowan fought like a man possessed, by fury, by purpose, by something deeper than vengeance. But Hadric was cunning. A twist of the blade, a flash of steel, and Rowan staggered, blood blooming across his side. "No!" Ilara cried, rushing to catch him. Rowan dropped to one knee, breathing hard. "You have to finish it." "You're not dying today," she hissed, gripping his hand. Hadric laughed, touching but pointless. Ilara rose slowly, her fingers tightening around the hilt of her sword. "You used me. You used my sister. You tried to break him, but you forgot one thing." Hadric raised his brow. "And what's that?" "I'm not afraid of the wolf." She struck. Their blades collided, sparks flying. She moved with raw determination, each step driven by everything she'd endured. For Leora, for the village, for Rowan. A moment's hesitation from Hadric, and Ilara drove her blade through his side. He gasped, eyes wide. "You are nothing." "No," she said, voice steady. "I'm his." Hadric collapsed, his body falling into the firelit shadows. She turned to Rowan, kneeling beside him. Blood stained his tunic, but he was still conscious, eyes fixed on her. "You shouldn't have done that," he whispered. "I had to." She cupped his face, trembling. "I saw your heart long before I saw your curse." His breathing slowed. "And now you're part of it. I was always part of it." The moonlight shone through the broken roof, bathing them in silver. Something shifted in the air, a pull, a warmth. Rowan shuddered as light wrapped around him, not violent like the old transformations, but gentle, pure. The wounds on his skin faded. His eyes, once consumed by the beast, now held only depth. "Ilara." "I'm here," she whispered. "Whatever this is, we face it together." He touched her hand, fingers interlacing. "The curse. It's not just blood. It's pain, grief, power, twisted by fear. But you—" "I don't want to fix you," she said softly. "I just want to stand with you. As you are." A silence passed between them, deeper than words. Then Rowan leaned forward, pressing his forehead to hers. In that bond, forged not by magic but by choice, something ancient cracked. The curse didn't shatter, but it bent. For the first time, Rowan was not a slave to the moon. He was its equal. Outside, the fires began to die down. The battle was over. But what had been born between them, of blood, of moonlight, of love stronger than fear, was just beginning. Snow fell gently over the scorched remnants of Thorn Keep. The fires had been extinguished, the bodies cleared, but the scent of ash lingered in the wind. In the aftermath of war, silence reigned, heavy, uncertain. Rowan stood at the highest tower, watching the horizon. His wounds had healed, but inside the conflict had only deepened. Ilara was safe. The kingdom had been reclaimed, but the court was restless. Below, nobles gathered in the grand hall, their whispers sharp as blades. The royal advisers, returned from hiding, demanded a decision. To restore order, the king must wed Lady Selene of Varin. The treaty could not be ignored. The alliance was law. Rowan hadn't spoken since the decree was laid before him. Ilara, meanwhile, sat quietly in the shadows of the great library. She knew. The silence between them had said more than words ever could. Leora approached gently. "He hasn't come to see you." "No," Ilara murmured, "and he won't." "Do you think he'll choose her?" Ilara's throat tightened. "He'll choose the crown." "He has to." That night the castle held its breath. Candles were lit in every window. The people gathered in the square waiting for the announcement. Snow coated the rooftops like a burial shroud. Inside the throne room, Rowan stood before his council. Lady Selene stood at his side, elegant and silent, her smile a mask of politics. An advisor stepped forward. "Your Majesty, the union is ready. With your vow, the kingdom is secured." Rowan stared ahead, unmoving. "Is it loyalty?" he said quietly. "If it's bought with chains." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. "I have ruled by fear," he continued. "By silence. I believed the wolf in me could never know peace, that the curse ruled my fate, but I was wrong." Selene's smile faded. Rowan turned, his voice rising. "A kingdom bound in fear will not endure, and I will not trade one cage for another." He looked to the back of the hall where Ilara stood, pale and still. Their eyes met, and the breath she didn't know she'd been holding escaped her chest. "I choose her," Rowan said, "not as a scandal, not as rebellion, but as my equal." Gasps erupted. One lord stepped forward. "This is madness." "She is nothing. She is everything," Rowan growled. "She saved this kingdom when others fled. She stood beside the beast and did not run." Another voice cried, "The alliance, I will build new alliances, but I will not sacrifice what makes me human." He crossed the hall toward Ilara. "Say the word and I will walk away. I will give up the crown, the keep, everything." "Just say it." Ilara's voice trembled. "I never wanted you to give up your kingdom." "And yet," he whispered, "I would." She reached for his hand. "Then let's build it together." Outside, the bells tolled, not in mourning, but in revelation. The people looked up to the tower where their king stood, not with a bride chosen by treaty, but with the woman who'd weathered storm and shadow beside him. Some wept, some cheered, and deep in the mountains the wolves howled, not in sorrow but in recognition, for the Alpha had made his choice, and it was love. The winds that swept through Thorn Keep carried more than winter's chill. They carried unrest. Whispers turned to warnings. The old council called Rowan's defiance reckless. The northern barons, angered by the broken betrothal, threatened retaliation. And deep beneath the castle, in chambers untouched by time, the curse stirred. Rowan stood alone in the war room, staring at the ancient tapestry of his bloodline. Wolves embroidered in gold ran across the cloth, each one bearing the mark of the moon. Ilara found him there, silent, still. "They won't accept us," he said, not looking at her. "They see you as weakness. They see my love as betrayal." "Then let them see," she replied. "Let them see what love can break." He turned, and the torment in his eyes was raw. "The curse hasn't lifted, not fully. I feel it gnawing at the edge of my control. Every night the moon rises, and I wonder how long I have left before it consumes me." "You're not alone in this," she said, stepping closer. "We've faced worse." "No," he said, voice barely above a breath. "We haven't." That night, the sky darkened with an unnatural storm. The moon rose blood-red, and the air grew thick with dread. Rowan collapsed in his chamber, pain racking his body, the curse clawing its way to the surface. Ilara was at his side before the guards could stop her. "Don't touch me," Rowan gasped. "I don't want to hurt you." "I'm not afraid," she whispered, gripping his hand. His skin burned hot. His eyes turned silver. He convulsed with each breath. "I can't fight it," he choked. "It's too strong." Yes, you can, but not alone. She pressed her forehead to his. Let me in, let me carry it with you. Something inside him cracked. The curse, so long bound by fear and blood, met something it could not swallow. Love. The moonlight struck them both, but instead of pain, warmth bloomed. A force ancient and unspoken surged through their bond. Ilara's heart beat with his. Her soul reached through the darkness and found him. The transformation halted. Rowan opened his eyes. The silver was still there, but it no longer raged. It shimmered, controlled, balanced. Ilara. She smiled through tears. You're still here. A loud knock shook the chamber door. A messenger burst in, breathless. My king. The seal beneath the keep is breaking. The curse and its unraveling. They rushed through the corridors, descending into the forgotten crypts. There, at the heart of the ancient altar, the seal glowed with fiery cracks. The magic holding centuries of pain and power was collapsing. Rowan stepped forward. It's bound to my blood. If it breaks without control, it could consume us all. Ilara grabbed his hand. Then we break it together. They placed their hands on the altar. Light surged, blinding, searing. Memories of pain, of wolves and war, of kings who lost themselves, flashed before their eyes. And then silence. The glow faded. The seal turned to dust. The curse was gone. Rowan fell to his knees, breathless, not from agony but relief. For the first time in his life, he was free. The chains of legacy had shattered. The beast had bowed not to violence but to love. He looked up at Ilara, tears in his eyes. You did this. No, she said, pulling him into her arms. We did. Outside, the storm broke. Snow fell softly, not with fury, but with peace, and the moon once feared shone like a blessing on the kingdom reborn. The first true dawn in weeks broke over Thorn Keep, not with fire or storm, but with gentle light and birdsong. Snow melted from the rooftops, revealing the bones of a kingdom scarred but still standing. The curse had lifted, the seal was broken, and in the silence that followed, hope began to bloom. Ilara stood on the balcony overlooking the courtyard, the wind brushing her hair back from her face. Below, villagers and nobles alike worked side by side, rebuilding walls, planting flags, mourning the fallen, honoring the brave. The lines that once divided them were blurring. Behind her, footsteps approached. Rowan. He stepped into the morning light, no crown on his head, no armor on his shoulders, just a man. Whole. They're calling it a miracle, he said. It feels like one, Ilara replied, eyes still on the horizon. But it wasn't magic. It was choice. You chose to change. He smiled, quiet and full. Not alone. They stood in silence for a moment, watching their people. The pain had not vanished, but something new had taken root in its place. I've been thinking, Rowan said, voice more thoughtful now. This throne, this crown, it was never meant to be held by fear. Maybe it's time we ruled differently. Ilara turned to him. Together? If you'll have me, not just as king, but as man, as partner. As the one who would walk beside you, not ahead. She smiled through the tears threatening her voice. Then kneel, Rowan Thorn, not as a king, as a man asking for a future. He did, without hesitation, and she reached for him, pulling him back to his feet. I've already said yes in every battle we've faced. This is only the beginning. Later that day the court gathered, not for a coronation but for a renewal. The people of the kingdom stood shoulder to shoulder in the great hall, eyes turned toward the dais. Rowan spoke first. I was born to lead, but I was never taught how to love. Power without love is a cage. Fear without trust is a chain. But today we break both. He turned to Ilara. She was never meant to wear a crown, but she carried more weight than I ever could. She reminded me who I was beneath the curse. She reminded me that a kingdom is not stone or steel, but people. He reached for her hand. I name her not consort, but queen. Not by blood, but by bond. Chosen. True. Cheers erupted, some wild, some hesitant, but all real. Ilara stepped forward. We will rebuild. not in the shadow of monsters, but in the light of mercy. This kingdom belongs to all who rise to protect it, who dare to love in the face of darkness. And from that day on, the people of Thorn Keep remembered the story not as a legend of wolves or curses, but as a tale of a girl who traded her freedom for her sister's life and found a crown she never sought. She was not born to rule, but she ruled with grace. He was born to command, but he learned to serve. And together they led a kingdom not built on fear, but on the bond they forged through fire and moonlight. As the sun rose higher, casting gold over the banners and stone, Ilara turned to Rowan. "We've given them peace. For now," he said. "But if the day ever comes when the darkness rises again—" She nodded. "Then we'll rise with it." He took her hand and they stood before their people, not perfect, not untouchable, but whole. And the story of the Alpha King and the girl from Hollowmere lived on, whispered in taverns, carved in stone, sung under the moon. Because in the end it was never about breaking the curse, it was about becoming free.